The suitcase hit the ground with a dull thud. Teresa looked at her own empty hands and then at the closed door behind her. On the other side, she could hear Adriano locking the door, as if he were sealing a coffin. She was on the street. Without warning. Without explanation. With nothing but the clothes on her body and a torn plastic bag with a few belongings he had thrown onto the porch. 23 years erased in 20 minutes. Adriano Carvalho was the kind of man everyone admired from a distance. Rich, successful, owner of a network of medical clinics that spread his name throughout the city. He had the right smile for the cameras, the right words for the newspapers, and the right coldness to destroy lives without getting his hands dirty. To the world, he was a philanthropist. To those who lived inside that mansion, he was something else. Teresa started working in the house when she was only 17. At the time, she was just a frightened girl trying to help her sick mother. Adriano was still building his empire, and his wife Natalia was kind. Sweet, even. But Natalia died 6 years ago, and with her died any trace of humanity in that house. After that, Adriano became a ghost who walked through the corridors as if he were always irritated by his own shadow. Teresa became invisible. She was not treated like a person, she was treated like furniture. An object that cleaned, cooked, organized, and disappeared when it was no longer useful. She accepted all of it. She accepted it because she needed to. Because her mother needed expensive medicine. Because she did not have enough education to get another job. Because, deep down, she was afraid that no one else would want her. But that morning, something changed. Teresa was tidying the office when she found an open folder on the desk. It was not in her nature to snoop, but something caught her attention. They were medical documents. Reports. Names she did not recognize. And then she saw something that made her heart freeze. Altered records, forged signatures, patients who never existed. She did not understand everything, but she understood enough. Adriano was defrauding the healthcare system. He was charging for procedures that were never performed, diverting public funds, lying in official reports. Teresa stood frozen. Maybe she should have pretended she had seen nothing. Maybe she should have left quietly. But something inside her refused to ignore it. She thought of the people who trusted those clinics. She thought of the elderly, the sick children, the desperate families. When Adriano entered the office and saw her standing beside the desk, he knew. He did not need words. Her look gave everything away. You saw it. It was not a question. Teresa swallowed hard. She tried to speak, but no sound came out. Adriano took 2 steps toward her. He did not shout. He did not need to. His silence was more terrifying than any threat. You don't understand what you saw. And even if you do, no one will believe you. Who are you? A maid. A black woman with no education, no evidence, no credibility. Who do you think they're going to listen to? You or me? Teresa felt the tears burn in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. She was not going to give him that satisfaction. Now get your things and get out of my house. Immediately. That was how it ended. Without ceremony. Without mercy. Now she was there, on the wet sidewalk, with the rain beginning to fall. She had nowhere to go. She had no one. Her mother had died 2 years earlier, and the few relatives she had lived far away, in cities she did not even know how to reach. Teresa began to walk. She did not know where to, but she knew she could not stand still. With every step, she felt the weight of injustice tightening her chest. Adriano was right about one thing. Who would believe her? She had no proof. She had no power. She had no voice. But as she walked through the empty city, something began to grow inside her. It was not anger. It was something deeper. It was the certainty that she could not let it go. That perhaps, somehow, there was still something she could do. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment saying what you thought and which city or country you are watching from. Teresa did not know it yet, but that walk under the rain was about to take her to a place that would change everything. A place where no one, not even she herself, could imagine. Teresa walked for hours under the light rain that would not let up. Her feet ached, her clothes were soaked, and hunger was beginning to gnaw at her. She had no money. Adriano had never paid her properly. He said the house, the food, and the room were part of her salary. Now she understood. It was a way to keep her trapped. When night fell, Teresa found shelter under an old awning near a closed market. She sat on the cold ground and hugged the bag to her chest. There alone, she allowed herself to cry. Not for the lost years, but for the humiliation. For the feeling that she was worth nothing. As she wiped her tears with her wet sleeve, a woman approached. She was elderly, bent by time, but with eyes that seemed to see more than they should. "Are you okay, my daughter?" Teresa nodded, but the lie was obvious. The woman sat down beside her with difficulty and offered a piece of bread wrapped in a napkin. "Eat. It looks like you need it more than I do." Teresa hesitated, but hunger won. She ate in silence while the woman watched the rain fall. "My name is Beatrice," the woman said. "And you don't need to tell me anything. But if you want to talk, I'll listen." And Teresa talked. She told her everything. About Adriano, about the documents, about being thrown out into the street like trash. Beatrice listened to every word without interrupting. When Teresa finished, the old woman sighed deeply. "I know men like him. They think they can do whatever they want because they have money and power. But every man has a weak point. Sometimes, we just need to find it." Teresa frowned. "How am I going to find anything? I have nothing." Beatrice smiled sadly. "You have more than you think. You have the truth. And that, my daughter, is the most dangerous weapon there is." Beatrice's words echoed in Teresa's mind all night long. She could not sleep. She stayed there, thinking, turning over every detail of what she had seen in Adriano's office. And then something clicked. She remembered a conversation she had overheard months earlier. Adriano was on the phone, nervous, talking to someone about an auditor who was investigating irregularities in the clinics. He said he had taken care of the problem, but the auditor's name stayed etched in Teresa's memory, Ricardo Mendez. Maybe he was still investigating. Maybe he was the only person who would believe her. The next morning, Beatrice took Teresa to a cheap internet cafe in the city center. With the few coins the old woman had, Teresa managed to access the internet and search for the name. She found him. Ricardo Mendez was an inspector from the health department. He had a public office. Teresa wrote down the address on a crumpled piece of paper and ran out. Ricardo's office was in a gray, lifeless building, full of employees who looked as tired as the old furniture around them. Teresa went to the reception desk and asked to speak with him. The receptionist looked her up and down, noticing the wrinkled clothes and disheveled hair, and answered with disdain. "He doesn't see anyone without an appointment. And he doesn't see just anyone." Teresa felt anger rise, but swallowed it. "Please. It's urgent. It's about Adriano Carvalho." The woman rolled her eyes. "Everyone wants to talk about someone important. Sit there and wait." Teresa waited for 3 hours. When she was finally called, she entered a cramped room where Ricardo was sitting behind a desk piled with papers. He was a middle-aged man, with tired eyes and an expression that clearly said, "This is going to be a waste of time." "What do you want?" Teresa took a deep breath. "I worked in Adriano Carvalho's house for 23 years. He is defrauding the healthcare system. I saw the documents. Fake patients, procedures that never happened, diversion of public funds." Ricardo crossed his arms. "Do you have proof?" "No. He threw me out before I could take pictures or grab anything." "Then you have nothing." "I know what I saw." Ricardo sighed impatiently. "Ma'am, with all due respect, I receive 10 complaints a week from people who know what they saw. Without evidence, I can't do anything. Adriano Carvalho has expensive lawyers. If I get close to him without solid evidence, he sues me and I lose my job." Teresa felt despair rise in her throat. "So that's it? He can do whatever he wants, and no one will stop him." Ricardo looked at her with pity, but also with weariness. "Welcome to the real world." Teresa left that office with a heavy heart. Beatrice was waiting outside, sitting on a bench. "So, he didn't believe me." Beatrice held Teresa's hand firmly. "Then we're going to have to find a way to make him believe." That night, while sleeping on the couch in the small kitchenette that Beatrice shared with 2 other women, Teresa had a thought that would not let her sleep. What if she went back? Not to ask for forgiveness. Not to beg for her job back. But to get the evidence Ricardo demanded. It was dangerous. It was risky. Adriano could call her a trespasser, could even call the police. But Teresa realized something important. She had nothing left to lose. And sometimes, it is precisely when you have nothing left to lose that you become stronger. Teresa waited 3 days. 3 days watching the mansion's routine from a distance, hidden behind trees and the walls of neighboring houses. She knew every schedule, every movement. She knew that on Tuesdays Adriano left early for meetings that lasted all day. She knew that the new maid he had hired always took a long lunch break. And she knew where he kept the spare key to the office. Beatriz tried to dissuade her. "This is dangerous, my daughter. If he catches you inside, he can accuse you of trespassing, of theft, of anything." "I know," Teresa replied, with a calm that surprised even herself. "But if I don't do this, he stays free. He keeps deceiving people. He keeps thinking he can destroy lives without consequences." Beatriz looked into her eyes and saw something different. She was no longer the broken woman she had found under the awning. She was someone who had found a purpose. "Then go. But be careful." On Tuesday, Teresa put on dark clothes and waited. She saw Adriano leave by car at 7 in the morning. She saw the maid leave for the market at 11. Then, with her heart pounding, she jumped over the back wall. The house was silent. Every step she took echoed like thunder in her ears. Teresa went straight to the office. The door was locked, but she knew where the key was. Adriano always kept it under the plant pot in the hallway. He thought he was clever, but after 23 years, Teresa knew all his secrets. The key turned in the lock with a soft click. Teresa went in. The office was exactly as she remembered it. The large dark wooden desk, the stacked files, the computer turned off. She went straight to the drawers. Locked. But Teresa also knew where he kept the master key, inside the fake book on the bookshelf. Her hands were shaking as she opened the first drawer. Folders. Lots of folders. She began flipping through them, looking for the documents she had seen weeks earlier. But they were not there. Adriano must have hidden them better after realizing she had seen them. Panic began to rise. Teresa looked at the clock. 15 minutes had already passed. The maid could come back at any moment. She opened the second drawer. Nothing. The third. Empty. Then her eyes fell on the safe embedded in the wall, behind a painting. She had never been able to open it. But she remembered something. Once, years earlier, Natalia, Adriano's wife, had commented that he always used important dates as passwords. Birthdays. Special dates. Teresa thought quickly. What would be the most important date for Adriano? Not the wedding. Not anyone's birth. He had no children. No family. He had only one thing, the business. She tried the opening date of the first clinic. Nothing. She tried the date of the first big contract. Nothing. Then she remembered. The day he won the Entrepreneur of the Year award. She had been there, serving champagne to the guests. He had given a speech about how that was the most important day of his life. Teresa typed in the date. The safe opened with a click. Inside, she found exactly what she needed. Folders full of documents. Fraudulent contracts. Proof of embezzlement of funds. Printed emails with compromising conversations. All there, organized as if they were trophies of his own greed. Teresa took out the phone Beatriz had lent her and began photographing everything. Every page. Every detail. Her hands were shaking so much that some photos came out blurry, but she did not stop. She kept clicking, clicking, clicking. That was when she heard the front door open. Teresa's blood ran cold. Heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. It was not the maid. It was Adriano. She quickly slipped the phone into her pocket, closed the safe, put the painting back in place, and ran behind the office door. Her heart was beating so hard she was sure he would hear it. Adriano walked down the hallway, talking on the phone. His voice was loud, irritated. "I don't care what they're saying. You fix this or I'll fix it my way." He stopped right in front of the office door. Teresa held her breath. Every second seemed to last an eternity. Then he moved on, going up the stairs. Teresa waited another 30 seconds that felt like 30 years. Then she left the office silently, locked the door, returned the key under the plant pot, and ran. She jumped over the back wall and did not stop running until she was 3 blocks away. When she finally stopped to breathe, leaning against an alley wall, Teresa looked at the phone. The photos were there. All of them. She had done it. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to smile. Beatriz was waiting at the kitchenette when Teresa arrived. She showed the photos to the old woman, who examined each one carefully. "You are brave, girl. Braver than I imagined." "Now I have what Ricardo asked for," Teresa said, her voice trembling with adrenaline and relief. "Now he'll have to listen to me." Beatriz held her hand. "Then go there first thing tomorrow. And don't let him belittle you again." Teresa nodded. But something inside her already knew, this time would be different. This time, she was not asking for justice. She was demanding it. The next morning, Teresa returned to Ricardo's office with the photos on her phone. This time, she did not wait. She did not ask for permission. She walked straight past the receptionist and entered his office. Ricardo looked up, irritated. "I didn't call you. You can't just." "I have the evidence." He stopped mid-sentence. Teresa placed the phone on the desk and began scrolling through the photos, one by one. Ricardo leaned forward, his eyes widening with each image. Fake contracts. Invented patient names. Millions siphoned off in public funds. It was all there, documented, undeniable. "My God," he murmured. "How did you get this?" "Does that matter?" Ricardo looked at her with a mix of respect and disbelief. "Do you know what this means? This can bring him down completely. Prison. Loss of all assets. The end of his career." "I know." Teresa crossed her arms. "And I want you to make that happen." Ricardo took a deep breath. "I'll need the phone as evidence. And you'll have to testify. Officially. Adriano will hire the best lawyers. They'll try to discredit you, intimidate you, destroy you. Let them try." Ricardo smiled for the first time. "You're stronger than you look." "I'm just tired of being invisible." In the days that followed, everything happened quickly. Ricardo took the evidence to the public prosecutor's office. A formal investigation was opened. Search and seizure warrants were issued. And on a rainy morning, exactly 2 weeks after Teresa had been thrown out, the police knocked on Adriano's mansion door. Teresa was there. Not inside the house, but across the street, watching. Beatriz was beside her, holding her hand. Adriano came out in handcuffs. He looked around, confused, trying to understand what was happening. His eyes met Teresa's. For a second, he seemed not to recognize her. Then it clicked. His eyes widened, his mouth fell open in shock. He understood. Everything. It was her. Adriano shouted something, but the officers pushed him into the patrol car. Teresa did not look away. She wanted him to know. She wanted him to feel what she had felt. The powerlessness. The humiliation. The pain of being treated like nothing. But as the patrol car drove away, Teresa did not feel victory. She felt only a deep exhaustion. And a strange sadness, because she knew that would not give her back the lost years. It would not erase the scars. In the days that followed, the story exploded in the media. Clinic tycoon arrested for multimillion-dollar fraud. Health fund embezzlement scheme uncovered by former MAID. Teresa became news. Journalists knocked on Beatriz's kitchenette door, wanting interviews, wanting details. Teresa refused them all. She did not want fame. She did not want to be seen as a heroine. She only wanted the truth to be known. But something unexpected happened. A lawyer named Helena contacted Teresa. She worked for an NGO that defended labor rights for domestic workers. She explained that Teresa had the right to sue Adriano for conditions analogous to slavery, for all the years of exploitation, for unpaid wages, for degrading working conditions. "You could receive a large settlement," Helena said. "Enough to start your life over." Teresa looked at Beatriz, who nodded encouragingly. "I accept. But on one condition." Helena raised her eyebrows. "What is it?" "Half of whatever I win will go to a fund to help other women like me. Women who work in silence, invisible, exploited. I want them to have a chance I never had." Helena smiled. You are a rare woman, Teresa. Adriano's trial lasted months. Teresa had to face aggressive lawyers who tried to paint her as a liar, as an opportunist, as someone inventing everything out of revenge. But the evidence was too solid. And every time they tried to humiliate her in court, Teresa remembered why she was there. For the people Adriano had deceived. For the patients who had trusted him. For all the silenced women who never had a voice. In the end, Adriano was sentenced to 12 years in prison. His clinics were shut down. His assets were auctioned off to pay compensation to the victims of the scheme. And Teresa won the labor lawsuit. When the judge brought down the gavel, Teresa did not celebrate. She simply closed her eyes and took a deep breath. It was over. Outside the courthouse, journalists surrounded Teresa, but she did not stop to speak. She walked straight to where Beatriz was waiting, sitting on a bench. And now? The old woman asked. Teresa looked up at the sky, where the sun was beginning to break through the clouds. Now I start over. Beatriz smiled. And I'll be here by your side. Teresa held her hand. For the first time in a long time, she felt that she was not alone. And that maybe, just maybe, things could be different from then on. 6 months later, Teresa was standing in front of a small but dignified building in the city center. The sign at the entrance read, Casa Beatriz, Support and Empowerment for Domestic Workers. She still could not fully believe it was real. With part of the compensation money, Teresa had kept her promise. She rented the space, hired social workers, volunteer lawyers, and psychologists. The goal was simple, to offer a safe place for women going through what she had gone through. A place where they could report abuse, learn about their rights, get legal support, and most importantly, not feel alone. Beatriz was sitting at the reception desk when Teresa walked in. The old woman had insisted on working there, even though she did not need to. Someone has to welcome these girls with a real smile, she said. And that was exactly what she did. That morning, a young woman named Julia arrived at the center. She was only 19, her eyes swollen from crying so much, and she had a story Teresa knew all too well. She had been working for a wealthy family for 2 years. She was not paid properly. She slept in a tiny room with no window. She was treated as if she did not exist. Teresa sat with her and listened to everything. Every detail. Every pain. And when Julia finished, trembling, expecting to be judged or disbelieved, Teresa held her hand. I believe you. And you are not alone. Julia broke down in tears. But they were no longer tears of despair. They were tears of relief. In the months that followed, Casa Beatriz helped dozens of women. Some managed to sue their employers. Others just wanted a place to breathe, to understand that they deserved more. Teresa was there for all of them. And in each one, she saw a piece of herself. But not everything was easy. There were days when Teresa woke up tired, questioning whether she was making a difference. Days when the weight of so many painful stories felt like too much to carry. It was on one of those days that Beatriz sat beside her and said something Teresa would never forget. You can't save everyone, my daughter. But every woman you help is a life that won't be erased in silence. And that is already everything. Teresa also went back to school. She started a technical course in administration, something she had always wanted to do but never had the chance to. At night, after closing the center, she went to class. It was hard to balance everything, but every time she felt like giving up, she remembered the 17-year-old girl who entered that mansion thinking she had no choice. Now she knew there is always a choice. Sometimes it is painful. Sometimes it is frightening. But it always exists. One day, Teresa received a letter. It was from Ricardo, the inspector who had helped bring Adriano down. He wrote that after the case, other complaints had begun to surface. People who had been afraid to speak finally found courage. More corrupt businessmen were investigated. More frauds were uncovered. You started something bigger than you imagine, Ricardo wrote. Thank you for not giving up. Teresa kept the letter in a special drawer, along with others she received. Letters from women she had helped. Thank you letters. Letters saying that they too were rebuilding their lives. One Saturday afternoon, Teresa and Beatriz were sitting in the small garden they had set up behind the center. It was a simple space, with a few plants and wooden benches, but it was theirs. A place of peace. Do you regret anything? Beatrice asked suddenly. Teresa thought for a long moment. I regret staying silent for so long. For accepting being treated that way for so long. But I don't regret going back. Or fighting. Beatrice nodded. Do you know what I've learned over all these months? What? That the most powerful person in a room isn't the one who shouts the loudest or the one with the most money. It's the one who refuses to be silenced. Teresa smiled. That sentence summed it all up. She thought of Adriano, serving his sentence in a small cell, probably bitter, probably seeing himself as a victim of injustice. But Teresa did not feel hatred. She did not feel anger. She felt only a distant sadness for a man who had everything and chose to use his power to destroy instead of build. Teresa's story did not end with a fairy tale ending. She did not become rich. She did not become famous. She did not have a perfect, problem-free life. But she had something she had never had before: dignity, respect, and the certainty that her life mattered. And perhaps that is the most important lesson of all. It doesn't matter who tries to make you feel small. It doesn't matter how many doors are slammed in your face. It doesn't matter how many times they tell you that you are nothing. You always have the power to decide who you are. And no one can take that away from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment saying what you thought and which city or country you are watching from. Your presence here makes all the difference. Teresa looked up at the sky and smiled. For the first time in a long time, the future did not seem frightening. It seemed possible.